Hello and welcome back to my channel, which is dedicated to philosophy, art and culture, and music of course, and the anthropology of Michel Foucault. And some thoughts about it. So, Michel Foucault created the first department of psychoanalysis in France. He was teacher of psychology at the higher normal school, l'École Normale Supérieure, and at the University of Lille, by the way. And I have to say that he showed an interest in psychology and psychiatry even during his students' years, and he went to clinical studies at the St. Petersburg's psychiatric hospital, and he was fond of projective techniques, for example the analysis of Rorschach ink spots. That is his interest in a person in a borderline situation, and it connects also with Jasper's tradition and maybe Heidegger's tradition. So borderline situation or pathological condition certainly played a serious role in the further development of the anthropological project of Michel Foucault, which is often called the death of a person or the death of a personality. So this refers of course to the inner dying of person as a subject in the depths of psyche. A person ceases to be a whole phenomenon. This holistic view is something artificial for Foucault. He's defined, or this person is defined, rather as a puppet of power. The traces of oppression in this personality are older than the personality itself, or himself or herself. It turns out that the government forms a person and makes him only a small part of the composite state machine, and it's the state of society nowadays. And this puts the consideration of anthropological issues in a completely different plane, completely different card, I don't know. In 1960s, there was strong students' unrest in France, which went down in history as the May crisis. Oddly enough, the living standard of living in the country, in Paris, in France, at that time was one of the highest, by the way. And the indicators worsened somewhat by May 1968, when the unemployment rate increased, and young specialists, among others, were under attack of this statement. The identity of 78-year-old Charles de Gaulle was no longer credible. There was a lot of left sentiment, left third theses among students, which resulted in strikes and rallies, and the goal was a social and cultural revolution. The slogans were composed, I would say, as a theatrical spirit: be realistic, demand the impossible, for example, or we do not want to live in a world where the risk of dying of boredom is paid for the confidence that you will not starve to death, or I love you, or tell me that with a rock in your hand or in your pocket. So among the sympathizers were teachers, by the way, and they were Michel Foucault and Jean-Paul Sartre. And as I have already mentioned, first of all, the position of a person is changing. The position of a subject is changing. He's not so much a subject as a field of play of the forces of power, which seeks to integrate a person into system. In the work Words and Things, Foucault analyzes historical periods of development and asks the question: is the world our perception, or is the world the essence of things as they are? And he speaks of the world as a fitting of things in the all-encompassing syntax of the world, whereas beings interact with each other and communicate with each other. A plant communicates with an animal, the earth communicates with the sea, a person communicates with everything that surrounds him, and these intuitions, these theses, these thoughts were significant already for example, Martin Heidegger, in his Sein und Zeit, Being and Time. So, all things become mediated through language. Language becomes, as it were, nowadays, a separate, independent being. And at the same time, a person is considered by Foucault still in the context of the possibility of another being. I am another. And thanks to this relationship of rivalry, things located at the different ends of the universe, and the universe can become similar to each other without their coupling and convergence. So, Foucault's history of madness examines the main issues of Descartes' cogito and Descartes' thoughts, reflections on the first philosophy. And for Foucault, madness is the significant point, historical point, and madness was on the one hand completely excluded from the world, and on the other completely objectified, but it was never revealed by itself, speaking its own language. And madness in the classical era keeps the deepest silence, and therefore seems to have fallen into hibernation, or in the sleep. So, how can a person reveal himself from the cogito if the result of reflection is associated with the appearance of an evil genius, or evil genius? You know this concept from Descartes' reflections. It turns out that the voice of reason in the classical era is rooted in madness for Foucault, and at the same time, in the postmodern era, a person loses his own subjectivity and self-identification. Again becomes difficult for this person. Self-identification is a rather crucial point nowadays, I think. Be yourself, it's something very popular for us, and a person is a way of being in which he finds his justification constantly open. Obviously not limited, but on the contrary, again and again overcome the space between all that a person doesn't yet comprehend in the light of cogito. So, this is from the Words and Things. And in addition, an important role is assigned to the practice of great imprisonment. Great imprisonment and the formation of the medicine of mental disease is a phenomenon which comes from 19th century. And the practice of imprisonment and almost exile also manifests itself in the context of the power structures that Foucault talks about so much. So, in my opinion, Foucault's anti-humanism implies a refusal to consider man outside the context of nature. He wondered what is humanism after the death of a person. Man, as an invention of Western culture, exhausts himself. After the death of a person, there will be the world and its order, human beings, but not the man in his pure reason, in his pure state. At the same time, the ancient ethics is postulated as natural for Foucault because the desire for pleasure was absolutely justified in the eyes of the Greek. So it's rather complicated point of view of Foucault. I hope it was useful for you. Thank you for your attention and see you in the next video. Bye.